Oh, hello. Welcome to the Royal Jam Custom Shop. My name is Mike Stanley, and today we're going to talk to you about what kind of strings you should be putting on your guitar. Let's say you have a dreadnought, a classical, a semi-hollow body, a solid body with a trem, and your basic Les Paul. You put the same strings on all of them? No, you don't. Of course, you knew that already, or you wouldn't have all those guitars to start with. But which ones go on what guitars? Let's figure it out. Well, the first thing we're going to have to deal with, believe it or not, is what kind of pickup we have. Acoustic guitars use these ribbon sensor pickups, and this is more like a crystal the bridge sits on top of, and with the bridge on top of this, the strings over the bridge, the vibration gets carried directly to this. So there's no magnetic field between the string and the pickup. It's a direct vibration sensor. So these kind of pickups, generally you put bronze strings on. But if you have an electric guitar pickup, like a single coil or a humbucker, these guys are putting out a magnetic field over the top of them, and the string has to vibrate through that to create the electric current in the wire. Because of that, you generally want a string that has a higher iron content, and so we use steel strings or nickel-coated steel strings. Nickel-coated so that they're easier on your frets, really. If you have these kind of pickups, you're going to have to go with steel strings. But if you have an acoustic guitar, you may want to use bronze strings, but not always. This is a classical guitar. You can tell because it's got the slots in the headstock. When you have one of these, you put nylon strings on them. That's right, nylon strings, or silk and steel usually. And these, because of the nylon strings and the classical style of play, nylon strings. That said, these have that undersaddle ribbon pickup in them. This one is an electric classical. If you look over here, this is a standard dreadnought. It has no electronics on it at all. You use bronze strings on those pretty much without question. Everybody says bronze strings sound a little better. Here's an acoustic electric though, the black one there. That one I also use bronze strings on. Because of the direct ribbon contact, it doesn't matter. But the bronze, in my opinion, does sound more like an acoustic guitar than steel strings do. When we're talking about electric guitars, we're talking about steel strings. But then there's different gauges. You know, extra light, extra heavy, light top, heavy bottom. Which ones are the right ones for you? Here we have a 335, kind of a Gibson style, and here's a Les Paul, also a Gibson style. They're not Gibsons, by the way. This is an Epiphone, and I built that blue one. And this Strat is another one I built. This is a Fender style guitar. Fender style guitars have a 25.5-inch scale length from the bridge to the nut. But if you look at Gibbies, they have a 24 3/4. They're a little bit shorter. So what? Well, I'll tell you. What that's going to do is reduce the tension on the strings at pitch. There's a formula if you really care, but it's complicated and you don't want to bother. But what I'll tell you is this, and you put a capo on the first fret. That's about that difference, that 3/4 of an inch difference, maybe a little more. And if I put a capo on that, of course it's going to be higher. It's going to be F instead of an E on the E string, which means to bring it to pitch, I'd have to reduce the tension. And so there's less tension at pitch on a Gibson style guitar than there is on a Fender. Why does that matter? Well, on a Gibson style guitar, because the tension is lower, you can put a heavier gauge set of strings on it. The thicker strings are the lower ones, right? You'd have to tune them a lot tighter to make them as high as a skinny string. So, because the tension is lower on average on a Gibson, you can put a little bit heavier strings on it. Why the difference? Well, lower tension means the strings bend a little easier. So theoretically, you can bend strings on a Les Paul or a Gibson easier than on a Fender scale. Of course, that also means that if you're bending strings easier at lower tension, they're going to go out of tune more. You know, you Gibson players, Gibbies go out of tune more because of the shorter scale length. Fender guitars with their 25.5-inch scale length, there's more tension. So, strings tend to be a little more stable on pitch. Of course, Leo fixed that by putting this nice tremolo system on here, and as soon as you use that, you're out of tune too. So all things are equal, really. But it also means that on a Fender, because you have a higher overall tension, you generally use a little bit lighter gauge strings. On a Gibson, I use 11s or sometimes even 12s for a high E string, and I go all the way up maybe to a 52. But on a Fender, generally I use like a 10 to a 46, a little bit lighter gauge. And those numbers, by the way, are in thousandths of an inch for you newbies out there. So the smaller the number, 0.010, you know, it's 10 thousandths of an inch, which is, you know, just a little bit thicker than your hair. When you get into really light gauge strings like 8s and 9s, your frets better be in really good condition or you'll just break them. If your frets are not polished really nice, you'll just break those little guys. But 10 is pretty stable, even on like the Japanese and Chinese import guitars. Although if you're buying a Chinese guitar, no. I'm Mike Stanley. This is the Royal Jam Custom Shop. Visit us online at royaljam.com. Royal Jam like the King's Jelly. We also have a Facebook page. Like us on there at the Royal Jam Custom Shop. And thanks for your support of real human music. See you next time.